In 2015, I decided to take a solo hiking trip to an abandoned fire lookout deep in the forest, completely isolated, with no cell signal and not a single trail leading to it. It was just me, a backpack packed with supplies for 2 days, and a handheld GPS guiding me through thick brush and increasingly ominous, tangled terrain as I ventured deeper into the woods. After more than 4 hours of trudging through cold trees and the eerie howl of the wind, I finally caught sight of the lookout tower, old, rusted, yet still standing in the wilderness swallowed by darkness. I climbed the rickety metal ladder, each step groaning like the lament of trapped souls, and when I reached the top, I saw the vast expanse of forest stretching out under a gray haze. No signs of human life, no lights, no sound. Just me and the decaying room inside the tower. A rotted bed, a moldy wooden table, and shattered glass windows like the empty eyes of the dead. That I cooked a small meal and sat on the balcony to watch the sunset, thinking there was nothing out there but peaceful nature. That was until I saw a faint orange glow flickering beneath the trees, moving in a strange pattern, as if someone were walking through the forest with a torch. It was odd, because no one ever came this deep into the woods, especially not at night, and certainly not using a torch instead of a flashlight. The light disappeared after a few minutes, but an unsettling feeling began to creep over me. Then, someone silently appeared at the base of the tower, staring up at where I stood. They didn't speak, didn't move, just slowly raised a hand, as if in greeting or apology, then turned and walked straight into the darkness. My skin crawled and my heart pounded, but I convinced myself it was just a lone hiker, someone who had stumbled upon the tower by chance. Like me, that I tried to sleep in the cramped room, but couldn't shake the unease, especially with the winds howling and the groaning wooden beams. And then, in the middle of the night, a sound jolted me awake. The creaking of the metal ladder, one rung at a time, as if someone or something was climbing up from the blackness below. I held my breath, listening to the slow, deliberate steps getting closer, until they suddenly stopped. I stepped out onto the balcony, squinting into the darkness, but saw nothing. No one. But the moment I turned back, a shadow shot past the broken window panes like a gust of death. Panic seized me. I scrambled down the ladder in terror, hands trembling as I gripped the icy rungs, all the while feeling eyes on me from above. When I looked up, I saw a black face, no eyes, just a hollow void, peering over the edge, as if it wanted to pull me back. I ran, never looking back, crashing through thorns that tore at my skin, driven by pure survival instinct. I knew that thing wasn't human, and if I stayed, I wouldn't leave, not because I'd die, but because I'd become part of that room, like the silent spirits trapped there forever, waiting for the next naive soul to wander in where no one ever should. I don't remember how long I ran through the thick darkness of the forest, just that every heartbeat felt like it would tear through my chest, and every dry snap of a branch beneath my feet screamed at me to keep going. If I stopped, even for a second, I knew it would drag me back. Somehow, I made it back to my car, parked in a ditch off the roadside. I was shaking like I had just escaped death itself. I jumped in, locked the doors, started the engine, and drove away, never once daring to check the rearview mirror. But even far from that cursed forest, the sound of footsteps on the iron ladder and the image of that eyeless face haunted me. For days, I lived like a ghost, unable to sleep, barely eating, constantly feeling watched from dark corners, through cracks in the door, behind the curtains at night. Then one night, I woke from a nightmare, gasping in the dark, when I heard it, a soft creak, metal underweight. My heart pounded as I got up, walked to the window, pulled the curtain aside, and froze. Under the dim glow of the streetlight was a rusted metal ladder, standing upright against the side of my house. No one had put it there. And near the top, almost blending into the shadows, was a tall, gaunt figure climbing silently toward the second floor, moving exactly like that night at the lookout tower. I bolted out the front door, ran to the neighbor's house, and banged on their door like a madman until they opened it. I told them everything, panicked and breathless. They thought I was paranoid, told me to rest. But when I led them around back, the ladder was gone, like it had never been there. From then on, every night, I heard that creaking sound moving around the house. Never saw anything clearly, but I knew it was there. Eventually, I left a voice recorder running through the night, hoping to prove I wasn't losing my mind. The next morning, I played the recording. At 3:27 a.m., a whisper came through, clear as if someone had leaned right into the microphone, speaking slowly, as if from the grave. Don't run anymore. Your place is above, waiting for the others. Then came a dry, twisted laugh. No human sound, more like something that had forgotten how to laugh decades ago. After that, I never spent another night in that house. I moved, changed my number, cut all ties. Never told anyone this story until I received an unmarked package at my new address. Inside was a piece of rotted, dark-stained wood, as if soaked in blood, and a crumpled handwritten note that said, "Time to return to the lookout. No one escapes forever." I stared at the note in my trembling hands, the rotten piece of wood resting on the table like a relic dragged from a grave. And for the first time since that night, I felt something I hadn't dared to acknowledge. Whatever followed me down from that fire lookout hadn't stayed behind. It had come with me. I burned the note, threw the wood into a trash fire, packed a bag, and decided to leave town entirely. Drive as far as I could without a plan. Just go. But that night, in a cheap roadside motel in the middle of nowhere, I woke to the sound of metal creaking again, the exact same rhythm as that ladder, but this time it was inside the room, right beside the bed. I didn't look, I didn't breathe. I just rolled off the mattress, crawled to the door, and bolted outside in my underwear into the cold night air, screaming like a madman while the motel manager came running, shouting at me to calm down. But I couldn't explain because no one would. Understand that the fire lookout wasn't just a place. It was a thing, a hunger, and it had claimed me long ago. After weeks of moving from town to town, sleeping in my car, staying awake through the nights, I realized it wasn't going to stop. It wasn't about the place, it was about me. It marked me, like a curse etched into my soul the moment I climbed that ladder. And finally, with nowhere else to go, I made the decision that would either free me or destroy me. I went back. The hike felt longer this time, heavier, as if the forest recognized me, as if the trees leaned in closer and the wind whispered warnings in a language older than fear itself. But I kept walking, past the place where I once parked my car, up through the brush and thorns, bleeding from scratches I didn't feel, until I saw it again. The fire lookout tower, still standing, untouched by time, like it had been waiting. As I approached, I saw something tied to the bottom rung of the ladder, a strip of faded fabric from my sleeping bag. My breath caught in my throat. I climbed, each step saying that familiar metallic groan, a sound that no longer belonged to rust and age but to memory, to invitation. At the top, the door to the lookout stood open. I stepped inside. The room was exactly the same. The same broken bed, the same desk, the same shattered windows. But now, someone else was standing there. I didn't scream. I didn't move. The figure was tall, its face obscured by a sack stitched with barbed wire, its body twitching with unnatural tremors, and it pointed at me slowly, then turned and walked through the far wall like smoke. And that's when the walls began to rot before my eyes, like years were passing in seconds, the wood blackening, the glass melting, and then the floor collapsed beneath me, and I fell into a hallway, not part of the tower, not part of this world, dim, wet, endless, lined with rusted ladders rising into the darkness and voices whispering just out of earshot. That I understood then. The tower was a door, and climbing it had opened something in me that couldn't be closed. I wasn't just being haunted. I had been chosen. And now, I am here, somewhere below the roots of the forest, walking an endless maze of mold and metal, where the fire lookout is only one of many, where others like me wander, marked by their own cursed shelters, waiting for their turn to climb down, or worse, to call someone else up. If there's no time here, not the kind you measure on a watch. Anyway, down in this rotting corridor beneath the earth, beneath the tower, beneath everything, where walls breathe like lungs and every footstep sounds like it's being swallowed by wet soil. I keep walking, not because I want to, but because something behind me is always following, not with footsteps, but with silence so thick it pulls the sound out of the air. And even in this constant twilight where the walls drip and hum with voices I almost recognize, I know I'm not alone. Every so often I pass other people, or what's left of them. A boy clutching a melted flashlight and whispering to someone I can't see. A woman walking upside down on the sealing with a noose around her neck, laughing with a voice that crackles like fire. A man kneeling in a puddle, repeating, "I didn't look down. I swear I didn't look down," over and over until his skin peels from his face. But no one sees me. Not really. Like I'm drifting through the ruins of other people. The ruins of other people's madness. And I realize these are the ones who never escaped, who climbed towers like mine, opened doors they shouldn't have, and ended up here, walking until their minds unravel, or until something finally catches them that I don't know how long it's been when I hear it again. The creak of the ladder. But now it's not behind me, not above. It's below, as if somewhere beneath even this place, there's another descent, another layer deeper, and it terrifies me more than anything else, because some part of me understands that going down there means there's no coming back, not in a body, not in a dream, not in memory. Yet as I turn to run, the hallway twists like it's alive, reshaping itself, forcing me forward, and that's when I see a door ahead, old and red and covered in carvings I can't read, except for one word scratched in deep. Welcome. I open it. There's light, warm, yellow light, in a room. My old bedroom. The one I had as a kid, with posters on the wall, the ticking alarm clock, the toy chest, everything perfect, untouched by time. And sitting on the bed is me. Or at least, the me that never went hiking that day. Clean, calm, smiling. He looks up at me and says, "You can rest now. I've taken care of it." And before I can answer, he pulls something from under the bed, a piece of bone tied with red string, and presses it into my hand. The room shudders, distorts. The floor splits open like a mouth, and I fall again, this time through layers of myself. Memories I'd forgotten, moments twisted into nightmares. My first bike crashing into a ditch, except the handlebars are covered in teeth. My mother calling my name, but her voice is backward, wet, wrong. When I land, I'm back in the lookout tower. Not just a tower, the tower. Except it's not above the trees anymore. It's below them, hanging upside down, suspended in a cavern the size of a cathedral, its windows glowing from within like the eyes of a skull. And I hear them, hundreds of people, all around me, above me, below me, whispering, chanting, crying, climbing, all marked, all chosen, all trapped in the tower's hunger. And I finally understand the truth. The fire lookout isn't a place or a haunting. It's a living thing, ancient, older than the forest, older than language, that feeds on isolation, on fear, on memory. It lures the lonely, the curious, the lost, and once you've climbed its ladder, part of you never leaves, and so now I wait. I sit at the window of the upside-down lookout, watching the forest above sway in impossible winds, holding the bone in my hand, waiting for the next light to flicker through the trees, waiting for you to come climbing, just like I did it in One Remembers when the first tower was built. Not even the tower itself, but down here, beneath the roots of forests that have died and grown again 100 times over. There is a place deeper than memory, deeper than time, where the original fire lookout still stands. It isn't made of wood or metal, but of things older, black stone veined with pulsing red light, bone carved into walls, rope twisted from human hair. It leans impossibly into nothingness, suspended above an abyss that breathes, and at its peak is a single window, always lit, though no flame ever burns there. That I was brought here, not by walking, not even by dreaming, but by being pulled, like a nail drawn to a magnet, dragged through tunnels slick with bloodless roots and empty whispers, until I stood before it. I was not alone. Others stood with me, empty-eyed, trembling, their mouths sewn shut with silver wire. We were all marked, all chosen by our own towers, all fed through the layers like meat through a grinder until we reached this. The source. They say the first tower was never meant to be climbed. It was a prison, a seal, a warning. But someone, centuries ago, broke it open. A watchman, obsessed with silence. He carved the first ladder from the bones of those who died screaming and climbed up, believing he'd find God. Instead, he found something else. And when he looked through that window at the top, the thing inside looked back. That was the beginning of the curse of the lookouts. What started as one tower split itself like a sickness across the world, replicas appearing in forgotten forests, abandoned fields, mountaintops where no trails led. Some people find them in dreams, others while hiking alone, But once you enter one, once you climb, you're inside it forever, even if you leave. It watches you, follows you, calls you back. Now I stand at the base of the first tower, and I can feel it wanting me to climb. Each rung whispers my name in a different voice, some I recognize. My father, my childhood self, a girl I loved who vanished in college. Each step I take makes me less myself. My bones feel softer. My skin begins to itch like it wants to fall off. When I reach the top, there is no door, just the window. And when I look through it, I see you that you're reading this now. You think you're safe, but deep inside your brain, you feel it, don't you? That itch behind your eyes, that chill when you're alone in the woods, that rustling sound at night that isn't wind. It's your tower. It's been watching you since the moment you heard my story. You think you just read it? You think you're done? You've already started climbing. The air shifts as your breath catches. You look away from the screen, don't you? Just for a second. To check the corner of your room. To glance at the darkened window. You're not sure why, but you do it anyway. That's how it always begins, the unraveling. The tower doesn't need you to believe in it. Only to doubt what's real. Only to hesitate. Only to read this far. Because now it's too late. When you dream tonight. And you will. You'll find yourself in a forest you don't remember walking into. The trees too close. The air too still. There will be no phone signal. No moon. Only the sound of wood creaking far above you. You'll tell yourself it's just a dream, that it isn't real, that the tower can't hurt you. But then you'll hear it. The slow metallic creak of a ladder, and the whisper from the tree line that says your name in a voice that sounds like yours that you'll try to run. Everyone does. But the forest bends, reshapes itself, always leading you back to the clearing. And in the middle of it will be your tower. Not a memory, not a metaphor, but real and waiting. Different for everyone. Built from your fear, your grief, your guilt, whatever you never told anyone. It will call to you in the way only something inside you can. You'll climb. Inside, you'll find rooms that were never yours, but somehow feel familiar. A hallway from your childhood that shouldn't be here. A door you dreamed once, long ago, but never opened. Behind it, the people you've forgotten. The ones you've buried in your mind. All waiting. All changed. And when you reach the top, when you stand before the final window, you will see what I saw. Not the forest. Not the stars. Not your reflection. You'll see the faces of everyone who read this story before you, pressed up against the glass from the other side. Their mouths open in silent screams, their fingers tapping, always tapping, asking to be let out. But they won't be leaving. Because they aren't readers anymore. They aren't climbers. They are walls. And so will you be. The truth is, there is no escape from the tower because the tower is not a place. It is a pattern, a trap made from story, from memory, from you. And once the story finds its way inside your head, you're no longer reading it, that you're building it. So go ahead. Look over your shoulder again. Listen harder to the silence. The next time you hear the creak of a step behind you, don't run.